Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing part 6 of the Summer-Ween Halloween DIYs. For this project, I'm using this large wood framed piece that I found at the thrift store. Not entirely sure what it was meant for, but I'm going to turn this into a spooky sign. This little centerpiece was just held on by some screws, so I started by removing that, and then I needed to fill the holes. So I placed some tape on the backside of this and then just filled those in with some wood filler. Once the wood filler had set and dried, then I just sanded those down. Then I'm going to go over this entire piece with a very messy coat of some black chalk paint. I still wanted some of that wood to show through to make this look like a very aged and old sign. The main objective was just to cover up those floral paintings and the holes that I filled. I wanted to turn this into a large book page sign, so I typed out this Legend of Sleepy Hollow book page on Canva, and then I printed it on 2 separate pages so that it would fit this sign. To transfer this over to the wood sign, I'm using 2 pieces of some carbon paper that I got from Amazon, and I'm just going to tape these down so that they're not moving around while I am tracing over this. Then on top of there, I'll tape down my Legend of Sleepy Hollow book pages. Then I just used the little tool that came with my carbon paper to start tracing over all of this. And I'll be honest, it did take about 15 to 20 minutes to trace out all of this, but I think it was totally worth it. Once I was finished, I went over this with one of my white paint markers, and now I know this is black on top of black pretty much, and you can't see it in this video, but I could make out the letters. However, if you would prefer to do a white carbon paper, they also sell that on Amazon as well. Once I finished tracing over everything and filling in those bubble letters, then I took this outside and sprayed it with 2 coats of Aleene's acrylic sealer. You may have noticed the little heart on the top of this. I wanted to cover that up, so I'm going to be using these appliques that I got from Amazon, and I just painted these with some black chalk paint and then attached them using some wood glue. For this project, I'm going to be making some fun little apothecary bottles. I'm just using a few Dollar Tree bottles and 1 bottle that I found at the thrift store. To start all of these off, I am mixing a little bit of baking soda with some black chalk paint, and I'm going to go over these with just 1 coat of that baking soda and paint mixture. Once these were completely dry, then I wanted to make some little labels for these. I'm using some air dry clay and some of these small little frame molds that I got from Amazon, and I'm just going to make a few of these little frame molds. And for these, I am keeping the center parts intact. This way I can use these small alphabet stamps from Dollar Tree and make my own potion labels. And I'm just going to use those to make some little impressions on these clay frames to spell out some different kinds of potions. And for the last one, I used a skull and crossbones stamp that I had from my Halloween stamps. Then once I had all of those finished, I am going to use some gel super glue and attach each of these to the different bottles. Then I set these all aside and let the clay pieces dry overnight. 2 of my bottles didn't really have lids for them, so I decided to make some with this Dollar Tree skull and then this little pumpkin drawer pull that I already just had in my stash. So for now, I'm just going to use some more of that gel super glue and attach these to the tops of the bottles. The next day, I gave everything another coat of some black chalk paint, just without the baking soda this time. And I also painted that pumpkin drawer pull and the skull that I had attached to the other 2 bottles. I wanted to make these look really drippy and old and decrepit, so I used my hot glue gun and some very cheap glue glue sticks, and I'm just going to start at the top where the bottle tops are, and I'm gonna streak this hot glue down the bottles. I let the hot glue dry completely, and then once again I'm gonna do a final coat of some black chalk paint over these. Once that's dry, then to really make these pop and bring out those labels and all the little drippy parts, I'm taking a big fluffy brush and some European Gold Rub and Buff and going over all of my bottles. For this project, I'm using some wall sconces that I got from the thrift store. I actually have 2 of these that I'll be doing, but for the video's sake, you'll be seeing me do this first one. To start out, I'm just giving this a nice coat of some black chalk paint. I did remove the little candle holder part so that it does not get any paint on it. Then to turn these into some spooky Halloween candle sconces, I am going to be using some air dry clay molds that I got from Amazon. I just chose a few different ones that I had in my stash, plus this little skull one that is also from Amazon. And I pretty much just started making some molds with this with the air dry clay, and then figuring out the layout once I had a bunch of pieces made. So for each of the wall sconces, I made 2 frames, 2 skulls, and then 4 of these little applique sort of pieces and a few of the button pieces. Then once I had the layout kind of figured out, I used wood glue to attach all of these clay pieces instead of using gel super glue, and that is because when I use the wood glue, I still have a few seconds to kind of move stuff around if I needed to. Once everything was glued down and in place, then again set this aside to let the clay dry overnight, and then the next day I went over all of those clay pieces with a coat of black chalk paint and gave the candle sconce a second coat. Then to finish it off, I'm using a fluffy brush and some more of my European Gold Rub and Buff, and I'm going to go over this entire thing and bring out all of those beautiful details. I also used some of this rub and buff on the candle holder before reattaching it to the wall sconce. For this project, I'm using this beautiful angel that I picked up at the thrift store. The first thing I did was mix a little bit of baking soda with some chalk paint in the color plaster. I want to make her look more like a stone. And I did mix this kind of thick, so I'm just using a pretty fluffy chippy brush and dabbing this all over her. Once she was dry, I wanted to add a few spooky elements to her to kind of make her resemble a tombstone heading. So I am using this skull mold that I've used before on a vase, and I ended up making about 4 of these skulls so that I could add them to her. She already had her hand posed in a way that looked like it could be holding something, so I added a skull there, and then I added a few more over to the other side of her where her arm was outstretched. So this is what she looked like once I had all of those glued down. I also wanted to add a tombstone to the front of her, so I rolled out some more of my air dry clay, and I just cut this down in the shape of a tombstone. And I really just wanted this to be a generic tombstone, so I used some of my alphabet stamps and just put "Rest in Peace" on the front of it. And of course, if you wanted to, you could personalize this tombstone to your favorite Halloween character. Once I had the letters pressed on there, then I just went around with a little bit of water on my finger and smoothed everything out. To make it look more spooky and weathered and old, I used a little needle tool and just added a few cracks to the front of it. Then I just used some gel super glue to glue this to the front of the angel. As you can see at the bottom here, she kind of has some little stone stone rocks at her feet. So I wanted to blend this tombstone in, and I did that by just using a little bit of air dry clay and making some new rocks. And again, I just used some gel super glue to attach those and kind of blend it in. I made just as many as it took to make it look like this tombstone had been here all along. I also used my finger and some more water to smooth out any of the separation between these rocks and blend them together. Then I set it aside and let it dry overnight. Like I said, I wanted this to look like a stone, so the next day I mixed that Waverly plaster with a tan color to get this creamy beige color for my angel. Now I realized most tombstones are a gray cement color, but I just wanted this to look more like a limestone. So once I had this completely covered in this color, then I mixed that same color with a little bit of baking soda, and I went over all of those new clay pieces that I made so that they would blend in with the angel. Just making sure that everything had the same texture. Then to finish her off, I used a large chippy brush and some European gold rub and buff and just went over this entire thing. And that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.